Affairs Canada is the USAID black hole of funding for Canada. That's what it is, and we're going to go through it. And yesterday they scrubbed the database, or they had a database accident, and just by random happenstance, all of this happens, right? What a crazy coincidence. Oh my gosh. Do you believe in those still? So the database that was housing all of this financial data, and it was public, shucks darn went offline. So I'll show you how to access it. I'll show you all of the stuff that's going on with that, because it's a pretty big deal. It's pretty interesting what's going on. And British taxpayers and Canadian taxpayers and Australian taxpayers, etc., are on the hook for $57 million in England. I don't know how much in Canada. Millions of dollars for BBC to go and train people on disinformation, misinformation, and journalism. So we've got Charlotte coming and telling us about that. Ukraine-US war spending audit. I love it. This is a wonderful idea. Perfect. Let's do that. And so apparently General Kellogg is going to action that audit. And there was a bit of Carney news that I missed, and he says there's a fever, and all I can think about is the Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper skit from Saturday Night Live. And we have to go through it because it's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. Mark Carney is tripling down on woke in the era where woke is dying a very public, very elaborate death. Mark Carney says, you know what we like? Woke. That's my favorite thing. And so, it's really interesting to watch. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we're starting in the US, but very briefly, and it's just to show you how we're manipulated by our press. And Laurie Goldstein, who, I use his stuff a lot. It's very interesting. He's coming out and saying that this is a legit thing. This is a legit poll. We should pay attention to this. There's a whole article based on this bullshit poll, and Laurie's saying pay attention to this, and Laurie says nearly 70% of Canadians think less of the United States due to Donald Trump's tariffs. This is an Ipsos poll. Quote, what surprised me is the intensity of the response, said Sean, senior vice president of Ipsos Public Affairs. The feelings are visceral. Okay, this is from 1,000 people. Okay, it is not a legitimate poll. It's ridiculous. 1,000 people, and you extrapolate that out to Canadians, all Canadians, it is not legitimate. So Global News asked Ipsos to do this poll. Ipsos asked 1,000 people between January 30th and February 3rd, 18 plus, and they say it was weighted, but 1,000 people, you get 300, like, you know what I mean? I don't think that's reflective of the population of the city of Toronto, never mind reflective of the population of Canada. So headlines like, oh, Canadians overwhelmingly hate Trump. Those 1,000 Canadians maybe do, but could you know in advance who those thousands and what those 1,000 people are going to say? Yeah, if you're Ipsos, if you're Nanos, if you're all of these polling stations, you have these people in databases and you can data mine them. And so you can give your client, in this case, Global News, exactly what they want, which is polls that make it look like Canadians don't like Donald Trump. Sure, we could do that. And they run a poll of 1,000 people who they can be reasonably assured hate Donald Trump. So there you go. They mix some people in there who do like Donald Trump to balance it out a little bit. You can't have 100% hate and say it's a balanced poll that represents Canadian, right? But there you go. They mix it up with lies and make it all taste good. Mario says, we got to talk about USAID. And this is tightly connected to Canada because USAID is giving money to Canada, and that money to Canada is compelling Canada to give money ourselves to other foreign countries to worry about disinformation and misinformation and all kinds of stuff like that. And that's interesting to me. So Mario's starting us off with the USAID, and he says, I wonder how many US state-funded media outlets the United Kingdom government funds. So the British government funds. Anyone know? None? Canada funds some. Mario says BBC is unhappy about U.S. government funding cut. So the BBC is upset about the USAID funding cut, and they're making it public. So Media Action, our statement on USAID funding statement, a free press is essential to freedom and democracy, and 75% of countries around the world do not have a free press. BBC Media Action supports local media around the world to deliver trusted information to people most in need. Like many international development organizations, BBC Media Action has been affected by the temporary pause in U.S. government funding. Oh, it's not temporary. It's not temporary, BBC Action. Get used to it. Which amounts to about 8% of our income in 23-24. We're doing everything we can to minimize the impact on our partners and the people we serve. Well, what's the rest of it? How much does the British taxpayer pay. And Charlotte's going to tell us about that in just a minute, but actually, I think we should go there now. Here's Charlotte. She says, why was USAID used to fund the BBC, the BBC's global charity, that is, which Brits have been charged £57 million for? That's roughly $114 million US dollars, right? Or maybe not quite, but that's roughly the exchange rate for Canadian dollars. Moreover, Canadian, Swedish, and Swiss taxpayers have been entered into this bloated alliance with the United Nations and Bill Gates. So here's Charlotte breaking it down. Here we go.
See, right, the British Broadcasting Corporation. One of the most interesting things about it is that its funding is very global. So to be specific, the BBC actually has a charity associated with it called BBC Media Action. It's registered in England and Wales, and it receives funding from USAID, although I'm not sure how much longer that'll be for, Canada, Switzerland, Sweden, and as well as the United Nations and Bill and Melinda Gates. Now, I don't think most Brits have ever heard of this organisation that they are paying 57 million in taxpayer money. That's between 2020 and 24 for BBC Media Action. And that's even before we get to Americans, Canadians, the Swiss and Swedish, about what they think about being entered into this alignment, this global BBC Media Action programme. And when you look at its report for 2023 to 24, you'll see a list of all of its projects it's done all around the world. And the BBC seems to think that there are some countries that just basically couldn't even have a functioning media if it weren't for the BBC paying them a visit and training them in the ways of mis and disinformation. In fact, disinformation and misinformation is a huge part of the report. It's quite comical in places because they're going to parts of the world that are historically not that safe and training fact checkers and making sure that information is not falling into the disinformation, misinformation category.
So this is 4 minutes. We'll leave it there. It's pretty crazy stuff, though, what they're doing. And one of the things, goodness me, my audio is very loud today. Hold on. I hope this is better. One of the things I was thinking about when she was talking is that maybe Bill and Melinda Gates and other people like them are fronts. Maybe they're part of some club and they know that they have to use their quote unquote riches that they made with their inventions and things like that, and then their investments of their money and stuff. They know they have to use those proceeds to further to be a private driver of this thing that the government's in on and the media's in on, and Bill Gates comes in and says, oh yeah, I'm going to put hundreds of millions of dollars into this as well. And then they go and take that and do BBC Action and talk about misinformation and disinformation in these unsafe, poor countries, right? And so it seems like they would definitely do that. It seems like if I was the person in power, if I was the entity in power, I would want to remain in power and avoid any kind of scrutiny. And so you have envoys that you put out into the world, and sometimes they're Manchurian candidates, and that means sometimes they're leaders who work for you, right? So think Obama, or what else? Denzel Washington played the role Manchurian candidate, where it's the Manchurian candidate was on the behest of a foreign government, and they worked for the foreign government, but they were in the presidency. Biden too, probably. So that they have protection that way, so the Manchurian candidate can fall and they can continue to operate. But it's useful to have people who aren't in a position where they can lose their position. Having a rich oligarch who just likes to, be nice to people and hand out vaccines like candy, that's useful because you can push your agenda and mask it in the oligarch, right? That oligarch is always just like that. You know what I mean, right? And so the world gets this unelected person who goes around and speaks to world leaders and almost behaves as an elected leader, but is not an elected leader. And it seems like that's an envoy of some power a step back. Does that make sense? And that's what I like. As soon as she was she flashed up the names and stuff. It seems like they've got these funds which they can bilk from taxpayers, and then they've got these other funds which are Bill and Melinda Gates and H&M Foundation, Trudeau Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, right? The Wellspring Philanthropic Fund. These are places where they can park money and then have representatives. And again, even the Gates Foundation isn't Bill Gates himself, right? Like But they have, and I think that that's just a way to protect and insulate Gates the man to continue his propagation of the program. Does that make sense? It's a gut feeling I got while she was talking. Does that make sense? Anyway, Mike Benz is talking about USAID. So we're getting screwed, and we're paying the United Kingdom to screw other people and train them in disinformation and misinformation, which is nonsense. And by getting screwed, I mean, of course, paying for this to be done in foreign countries and being told it's necessary foreign aid that our taxes are needed for. And that's nonsense. That's absolutely not true. This is not helping anybody. It's harming people. Mike Benz says, I cannot stress enough, USAID made a formal program to promote foreign countries to pass foreign laws and regulations to influence content moderation policies of U.S. tech platforms. Our government right now is rapidly trying to pass C63. C63, if you listen to Mr. Verini, is about protecting children online by criminalizing some speech and, getting rid of mis and disinformation and so on and so forth. But if you listen to what Mike Benz is saying, it seems that somebody has influenced our AG, somebody has influenced the people who support this bill, somebody has influenced our government to push these laws, to put pressure on American social media platforms and their free speech edict, which comes from the First Amendment because they're American companies, you could say. And America has a vested interest in protecting American countries when they're under attack like this from foreign countries. But America's actually funding it through USAID. So that's a conflict, and that's interesting, right? And so we should pay attention in Canada because we are acting against the interests of the United States, our biggest trading partner, biggest customer, and hopefully long-term partner and biggest customer without tariffs, right, everybody? Fingers crossed. So it seems like one of those things that we should pay attention to this kind of stuff when it creeps out. If I know this, if I look at this and say, looks like a fire over there, looks like that USAID money's been used, we're using it with USAID to influence foreign misinformation and disinformation, and these people who are experts at this are saying, here's the problems with this. They're trying to do this, right? Should we respond to that and scrap C63? No. We should pass it faster, right? And so, the powers that be aren't listening. They don't care. They're doubling and tripling down. And nobody's stopping them. I don't hear anybody really talking about stopping them. But maybe I'm not good at scrubbing the news. I don't know. Maybe this is my echo chamber, and I'm not good at looking at the wider internet. I saw a report talking about Kash Patel being vested in a Chinese company, and he won't uninvest. And it looked like very serious, right? There was a whole big thread. And then I looked at the journalist's credentials, and he was kind of the old school journalist, WAPO, New York Times, that kind of stuff. And then I looked at the criticisms in the comments, and the criticisms were explaining further what was going on. And I think that there was some kind of shield enacted, some kind of ethics shield or some way to shield Kash Patel from any kind of conflict of interest. This was a known thing before the Senate hearings were coming in. It's just being made news now because the Senate hearings it looked like he's going to be confirmed. And so I looked at that and I thought to myself, it's not newsworthy because it's just the left screaming and trying to make something where there's maybe nothing. Are ethics shields, do they work? Is that something that's acceptable? I think they're used pretty universally, so people think that they're acceptable. If an ethics shield is acceptable most of the time, is it not acceptable in this case? If not, why not? That's kind of my conclusion. So is that newsworthy? It seems like it's the left having a temper tantrum. It doesn't seem like it's going to derail Patel's confirmation, but maybe it might cause a problem. I don't know. And if it does cause a problem, I'll mention it. If Kash Patel doesn't get confirmed, I'll mention it. That'll be news. And if the reason why is because his connection with a Chinese company, then I guess it's a big deal. But again, ethics shield, does it work? Does it not? So there we are. Maybe I'm bad at scrubbing the news though, right? Who knows? Here is, this is Senator Kennedy, I believe. And he is talking about USAID. And this is just some crazy stuff that they're spending money on. This relates back to Canada, because Canada does exactly the same. And I've got receipts to show you. Here we go.
Okay, listen up.
Now, Mr. Musk started with the USAID. That handles a lot of foreign aid for America. American people are very generous. But I'll tell you what Mr. Musk discovered. I find it fascinating. he discovered that the American taxpayers are giving money to Afghanistan. He found that we are giving money to Yemen. He found that we are giving money to Syria. I didn't know that. Some of our foreign aid is going to Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria. He found that the USAID has 10,000 people, 10,000 people, employees, and every year they give away $40 billion. He found that the USAID gave money to support electric vehicles in Vietnam. Our money, taxpayer money. He found that USAID gave money to a transgender clinic in India. I didn't know that. I bet you the American people didn't know that. He found that the USAID gave $1.5 million to a Serbian LGBTQ group called Grupa Izadaji. I probably mispronounced that. My apologies. Anyway,
I feel his pain.
they got $1.5 million to, quote, advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities.
I mean, what else does Serbia need, right? Obviously, inclusion. Carol says, maybe it's just me, but it seems like a non-governmental organization shouldn't be getting any money from government. Unusual Whale says, Trump has signed an executive memo ordering a review of funding to all NGOs that rely on federal dollars as per Reuters. So that's interesting to me. And I think that it's funny. I was talking about this months ago, saying that like I'm not a non-governmental agency. Like I don't say, hi, I run Canada Poly. It's a non-governmental agency. It's just, that's my business. That's the thing that I do, right? Here's the thing that I run. I wouldn't say non-governmental agency, but if you're a non-governmental agency, you better believe that you're getting a bunch of government dollars. So the trick is in the name, right? What do? Oh, I work for an NGO. Oh, so you work for the government. Not really, but they do fund us a lot. Yeah, I know. That's a real conversation I've had with people. Libs of TikTok says, Senator Eric Schmidt breaks down some of the insane spending. Just because Kennedy wasn't enough, let's hear some more.
Because you can't really defend this kind of stuff. $45 million for diversity and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $3 million for girl-centered climate action in Brazil. $125 million to racialize public health. $288,000 for diverse birdwatcher groups. USAID, which is in the center of the storm right now, and rightfully so, spent $1.5 billion to, quote, advance diversity, equity, inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities.
We'll leave it at Serbia because those Serbians, man, they just need that inclusion. Pretty wild stuff, right? Have you ever seen Big Year? It's a Big Year. I think it's with Steve Martin, Jack Black, and one other guy. And the whole thing, it's about bird watching. A big year in bird watching is you see or hear all of the birds on some specific bird list, and it was a funny movie. So diversity bird watching. There you go. See, it was fine. It didn't have any woke anything. It was fine. It was like a Saturday afternoon. It's raining, and you're like, what should I watch? Big Year. So Steve Martin. Yeah. Secretary Sean Duffy is responding to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton she's not tagging Sean Duffy. She took a picture of Sean Duffy's thing, and Duffy says, Madam Secretary, Hillary Clinton, with all due respect, experienced Washington bureaucrats are the reason our nation's infrastructure is crumbling. You need to sit this one out. And Hillary Clinton says U.S. airlines had gone 16 years without a fatal crash or fatal crashes. The MAGA fired the FAA chief, gutted the Aviation Security Advisory Committee, and threatened air traffic controllers with layoffs. Now there have been 2 fatal crashes. Hope your unvetted 22-year-olds fix things fast. And he says in response, I know you're lashing out because Doge is uncovering your family's obscene grifting via USAID. But I won't let you lie and distort facts. The FAA administration announced his resignation over a month before Trump took office, and the air traffic controllers were always exempt from Trump's civil service buyouts. The previous administration shamelessly used U.S. Department of Transportation as a slush fund for the Green New scam, throwing away money on resources on wasteful environmental and social justice projects rather than updating our nation's antiquated air traffic control systems and other critical infrastructure. I'm returning this department to its mission of safety by using innovative technology in transportation and infrastructure. Your team had its chance and failed. We're moving on without you because the American people want us to make America's transportation system great again. And yes, we're bringing the 22-year-olds with us. So it's interesting, right? Here is Clandestine. He says, the USAID situation is just the beginning. It gets worse, way worse. If they were willing to go to these lengths to manipulate us, what else are they lying about? However bad you think it is, it's worse. Just wait until we get to Epstein, Mariana Abramovic, and the Podestas. And yeah, so it's definitely way worse than it seems now. And I don't know how deep the rabbit hole is going to go. I don't know how deep the public disclosure is going to go, but I hope it's all the way. I hope Trump treats the American public and the rest of the world like adults, like we should be, and not like the children our current governments are treating us like. And I think it's interesting to watch all of this disclosure. And if what should be disclosed is actually disclosed, if Patel releases the Epstein lists that he's promising, and if the RFK, JFK, all those files get released, it's going to be really interesting. And I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, because information like that's going to have an effect. It's going to cause ripples, right? There's going to be things that happen because that information is released. But I'm interested already in the kind of ripple effect from the USAID stuff. It's very much renewed an interest in Government Affairs Canada or Global Affairs Canada, excuse me. And Mark Nixon starts us off in this series of tabs. And he says, we need a forensic audit on everything that is spent on foreign aid in Canada. I absolutely think so. International assistance projects funded by Global Affairs Canada include climate infrastructure funds. This is $100 million. No, this is $1 billion. Yeah. But nine zeros is $1 billion, right? Climate infrastructure funds, accelerating coal transition investment program. And next one here is $930 million global fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. I was watching Ian Carroll yesterday, and he said one of the things he was uncovering was a specific company that had it's the biggest paid company by USAID, $17 billion over the lifespan of the agreement. And they transport AIDS drugs to Africa, but only 7% of the AIDS drugs make it to the destination. And they spend all this crazy money. And he said, what's with AIDS in Africa, by the way? Like, are they injecting a lot of drugs? Are they having a lot of butt sex? What is going on with that? And like, can somebody explain this to me that doesn't have some kind of, they're experimenting, they're making this happen somehow. Like, it doesn't make sense. And so the questions about, anyway, we're spending almost $1 billion on fighting AIDS and tuberculosis and malaria in Africa. What does it say? No, it just says Global Fund to fight AIDS. I assumed Africa because of the Ian Carroll story. I digress. Global Fund says another one, that's $785 million. Global Fund to fight AIDS and tuberculosis, same fund. $500 million. Climate Resilience Accelerator for Latin America and the Caribbean. Oh, awesome. Another $500 million for Gavi Alliance institutional support. I don't know what that is. Another one for $400 million. Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Okay, so the Vaccine Alliance. Not that makes it better. I just understand what it is now. Next one, $350 million. Canadian Climate and Nature Fund for private sectors in Asia. Honestly, we're on the hook for that, for like $350 million. Whew. So Dean says yesterday, within hours, Doge released information that Melanie Joly's Global Affairs Canada has been blowing Canadian tax dollars on foreign media. And we just learned that's the USAID BBC action, okay, foreign media. Mel Joly's Global Affairs data access system crashed. Mel Joly's Global Affairs says it was a coincidence. If a lot of people started going to the website and the infrastructure on the website did not have the capacity to handle it, it is plausible that they could make it crash like that. It's certainly plausible. I don't want to dismiss that because that's the reality of the internet. You can certainly cause a website to go down. They say it's Here it is. Development Canada says Global Affairs Canada's project browser is currently experiencing technical difficulties and we are working to resolve the issue. The claim that it was taken down on purpose are false. And so Rick says, do not delete anything, you effers. We have copies of everything, and it's true. Multiple people, and thank you everyone for tagging me this morning, tagged the CSV exports they were able to get from the databases. And yeah, so the database was intact, and so I guess, I don't know if they've scrubbed it because they could use the downtime to scrub it, right? It seems like the database is intact. People were talking about searching it this morning and still coming up with things. So, but also, there's archive. So Vote Canada says, here you go. Here's the backup. So you can check the archive if you want from the internet Wayback Machine, right? And so that's pretty interesting. And you've got 1,732 projects to look at if you're interested. And so that's pretty interesting, just in case it does go down again, if ever you want to look it up. And Mark Emery says there are over 1,700 outrageous Canadian government spending programs in this government archive. Check out the first 80 of them in the following thread. The rest will follow, so you can screen capture any of them for inquiries to your MP, whom you should ask how this can happen. Yeah, for real, right? So Emery starts out $75 million to 2X Canada Inclusive Economy Recovery, $751,000 to a community approach to gender equitable education, $7,200,000 to a gender responsive system approach to universal health care in the Philippines. We're so generous. $18 million to a new partnership for sustainable impact investing in frontier markets. 18 million, 1,000 women. I am woman. I exist. I participate. It's to colleges and institutions, Canada, I guess. That's what it is. I guess it's for a play. But the 18 million for the 1,000 women, I am a woman, I exist, I participate wasn't enough. So they got another 500,000 as well, just to, pad it out, right? My gosh, 3 million for accelerate women entrepreneurs in countries of the American Partnership for Economic Prosperity. Accelerating Access Initiative Phase 2, accelerating Ethiopia's response to the coronavirus. That's 3 million. Pretty incredible stuff. 18 million on accelerating regional business growth in East Africa. So yay for that. Good job, Canada. Accelerating the elimination of gender-based violence against girls and adolescents in Benin. That's 10 million. So to UNICEF, I guess. And accelerating women's business growth to Renew International Canada. That's $13,500,000. So we're getting fleeced. All of our tax dollars are being stolen and given to bullshit woke initiatives. That's what's happening. Ryan says, this is just one random page from the international assistance projects funded by Global Affairs Canada. Do they ever have to report back with any results? It's millions and millions worth of our money going to advance sexual and reproductive health. Yeah, advancing sexual and reproductive health. It sounds like a community class. So yeah, can we hire the Doge guys after they're done in the United States? Hey guys, we've got a government that needs a Doge. How much is that? Oh man, if Trump doesn't productize this and offer it to other countries, I mean, he's leaving money on the table, really, right? He's got the foreign registry, or what is it, the Foreign Revenue Agency now, right? If you want to purchase a product from the Foreign Revenue Agency, we've got this lovely Doge package here. Would you like us to forensically audit your government? Send that clip to Donald Trump, please. Well, I'd pay for it. We could crowdfund it. We don't need taxes. We could just crowdfund everything. Ryan Garrettson says, look at the amount of money Global Affairs Canada has given the WHO. This is 4 pages worth. One contract is worth $100 million. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I'm laughing, but inside I'm screaming with rage. Okay. So it's crazy. Andy Lee says actions by and for women to adapt to climate change. That's $10 million going to the Democratic Republic of Congo to train 500 men on positive masculinity. The project beneficiaries who will receive training on positive masculinity are estimated to be over 5,000 men. So there you go. Now, are they men or do they just identify as men? So, hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful